After Sleepless in Ponyville and For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, most every fan, including myself, were awaiting the day when Apple Bloom would get her chance to be mentored by Princess Luna. And Bloom and Gloom delivers just that. However, did this story live up to the previous Dream episodes? Let's find out. First and foremost, Babs Seed gets her cutie mark? I don't know if anyone saw that coming, but I can already imagine all the fan art that's going to pop up with her new scissors cutie mark. However, it does raise a rather interesting conflict for Apple Bloom. Each of the CMC have spent so much time trying to get their cutie marks, and yet none of them have seemed to have thought about what would happen after that point. Which is actually a rather relatable experience for most anyone who is trying to figure out what to do with their future. And the way they presented this conflict is actually rather clever. But we'll get into that later. Of course, most anyone watching this episode can easily figure out that each of these sequences are part of a dream, and a rather predictable plot can be an issue for many fans. I admit that was a bit distracting for me, but never to the point of making me dislike the episode, as there were plenty of little tidbits that kept me intrigued. For example, each time Apple Bloom goes through another section of the dream, there are slight changes throughout the familiar scenes that are rather easy to miss if you aren't looking for them. Like how the food Applejack is laying out on the table is different every time Apple Bloom comes downstairs. Or one of the more entertaining moments is how the rooster crowing actually changes into Pinkie Pie floating by the window with her balloons at one point. I gotta say, the animators had a lot of fun with this episode, doing their utmost with so many Easter eggs thrown around in the background. Which is rather helpful because other parts of this episode felt rather average for what I've come to expect from MLP. Not bad, but not great either. For example, some of the dialogue felt really cliché, like the scene with Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. We've seen these two go through this same shtick so many times that it's really becoming distracting. And even a lot of the dialogue between the CMC isn't really breaking any new boundaries. It just feels like a lot of the same conversations they've gone through before without really adding anything new. But with that said, we need to remember that a lot of this episode is Apple Bloom's dream. This is how she would see her friends, her family, the other townsfolk. So when some of the dialogue feels like it had been written by a child, that's because it's meant to fit with what a child's mind would interpret from her surroundings. And in that respect, yeah, I think this actually does work. It can be rather distracting for fans who have seen this sort of story before, but I suppose I give it more praise because it makes sense from a story perspective. But just because we're seeing a lot of this episode from a child's point of view doesn't mean the MLP staff have been skimping on the entertainment factor. The fact that they gave Big Macintosh a lot more of a speaking role here would have been more than enough to get the audience laughing. But then they change it up even more when Big Mac's voice is coming out of both Applejack and Granny Smith. I've watched this scene several times and it still makes me chuckle. But the one element that impresses me more than anything else here is the moral and how they presented it. I can remember reading through the comments whenever that eerie voice was speaking to Apple Bloom from the shadows, and most everyone was already calling Luna a troll. I kept shaking my head wondering, why would Luna be saying these things? It doesn't make any sense. Imagine my surprise when it was revealed that Apple Bloom was saying all of these things to herself. She was the one bringing down her own self-confidence and drive. And you know, that's actually kind of brilliant. Thinking about whether your own special talent would actually be something you'd want to spend your life doing. Thinking about whether the bond with your friends will change because of it. Thinking about how your own family would react to what you choose to do with your life. These are all very difficult questions that really don't have any easy answers. And the moral about learning to accept yourself is very well done. Kudos to the writers for pulling off yet another moral that both children can easily understand and yet is still highly relevant for adults. In the end, I have to say that Bloom and Gloom is more of an episode that I respect than I enjoy watching time and time again. I think the previous Dream episodes, Sleepless in Ponyville and For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, were more entertaining and even heartwarming. However, I really think Bloom and Gloom tops the list of morals being presented by Princess Luna, and having it sung in a lullaby by Applejack actually makes it all the more memorable for anyone watching the episode. Hush now, little sister, you're loved by all you know. Never lose their friendship, no matter where you go. There ain't no call to worry, so don't you cry or fret. A cutie mark won't change you, no matter what you get. That is a very soothing melody that I won't be forgetting anytime soon. But now I would like to hear from each of you. What did you think of Bloom and Gloom? Do you see the CMC any differently now that they're taking a more mature approach to getting their cutie marks? Do you find the moral relatable to anything going on in your own life? What was your favorite Easter egg in the background? Was there anything about the episode that you didn't enjoy? I would like to hear your thoughts on Bloom and Gloom, and here's hoping that the CMC continue developing into even more intriguing child characters in future episodes. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.
There ain't no call to worry, so don't you cry or fret.
Cutie mark won't change me, no matter what I get.